Chapter 2 Brotherly Love. Monte gathered his belongings for the day and thoughtfully picked out his favorite shirt, the one with a lion wearing a crown. A statement piece, the clerk had said when Monte brought the shirt to the cash register. Monte liked the sound of that. As usual, he dealt with the bustle of sharing a bathroom with his older brother Mark. Mark pretty much ran the streets, as their father would say, and was rarely home outside of family events, which angered his parents on a nightly basis. "Morning, Monte. Hope you weren't thinking of showering with hot water. I left you a good luck note on the mirror, by the way," Mark said, offering a sarcastic wink and blowing a kiss at his little brother. Monte held his head high and made his way past his older brother into the steamy bathroom, noticing the finger-written message on the mirror, "Don't get put in the locker today. Love, big bro." Internally, Monte laughed. Mark knew there weren't any lockers in elementary school. Chapter 3 Tough Talks. "There's our young king," Monte's dad shouted over his morning paper and across Mark at the dining room table. They were just wrapping up a conversation about Mark's part-time job at the local mechanic shop. "I admire your love for cars, Marcus. I believe in you and what you can accomplish. But one day your chickens will come home to roost. One day you'll look back and regret not having the courage to start your own shop. You've got to have something lined up. Maybe you should do a campus tour at Fats University today. You could even take Monte along for the experience." "Come on, Pops," Mark whined, trying to wiggle off the hook. "Monte's not interested in a college tour. He's 10 years old." "College is cool," Monte interjected, and Mark shot him a look that said, "Thanks a lot." Too late. Monte's father had picked up the cue. "College is cool. Your mother and I used to live near Fats when you were just a boy." The neighborhood was always crawling with students. Mark saw his chance to change the subject and pounced on it. He and Monte both knew their father's lectures came from a place of love, but that didn't mean they didn't try to get out of them when they could. "We always knew summer was coming to an end because of the Fats Domino Band practicing in the evening for the big fall football games," Mark said, mimicking his father's deep baritone voice. After taking another sip from his scalding cup of coffee, Mark's father smiled and said, I can still hear the soothing sounds of the saxophone solos and the blare of the trumpets leading the brass section. And the heartbeat of the drums as they set the tempo for everyone's feet in the stands. You boys must be talking about the good old days at Fats," Monte's mom interjected as she glided down the stairs into the kitchen in an angelic blue and gold sundress. "The vendors that came for the football games were my favorite part. I can still smell Auntie Nora's sweet potato pies, the ones that came in handheld aluminum packaging, still warm from the oven. Reminds me of our first kiss near Old Oak, babe." "Oh yeah?" Mrs. Ryerson said, with an eyebrow raised as she tugged at her husband's necktie. Monte and Mark grimaced at each other as their parents kissed. "Be great today, King Monte. Your mother and I will be waiting to hear how this big day goes for you. And as for you, Marcus, I'll be waiting to hear an update on the college search over dinner tonight." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, standing from the table, putting his hands in his pockets and walking away. Monte slipped the house key from his father's set of keys, dug a lanyard out of the junk drawer, and pocketed both the key and the 40 cents worth of reduced lunch money waiting for him on the counter. He kissed his mother, nodded smoothly at his pops, and headed out of the front door to begin the walk to school. "And you better not lose my key, Montellus." Chapter 4 A New Journey. There was a calmness in the air as Monte leapt off of the porch. He threw his backpack over one shoulder, looked back through the living room window, and smirked as he made his way to school. This was the first year Monte's parents allowed him to walk to school on his own. He felt a sense of pride, and while he might have been a bit afraid on the inside, he felt like he was one day closer to being a teenager. Monte had no shortage of dreams about teenage freedom, and even farther beyond that, adult freedom. He thought of college from time to time and made the decision that he was going to go a long time ago. He had watched movies based off of the drum lines within marching bands and idolized the athletes that had gotten full-ride scholarships on National Signing Day. One day, that's probably going to be me, Monte used to think to himself, but nowadays, he's pretty sure he'll go off to attend college. Let's get it, he quietly said to himself as he turned the corner and walked against the traffic which ran parallel to the city's metro rail. A little further ahead, there was a corner store that Monte often visited throughout the summer. He and his neighborhood friends had already planned to meet there to fill up on junk food and make the walk to school together. "Monte, hurry up! We're gonna leave you, man," Darren yelled from the crosswalk. "Yeah, come on, bro," shouted Darren's twin brother David. Clutching his backpack tighter with his right hand, Monte tucked his father's house key deep in his pocket with his left and yelled, "I'm coming! I'm coming!" Monte knew his best friends would never leave him, but he still picked up the pace and caught up to them. He didn't want to be pegged as the slow kid. As kids gathered at Three Pyramids Elementary, the neighborhood school they were zoned for based on their parents' zip code and household income, they were consumed by the joy of seeing one another and reliving summer stories of swimming pools, sleepovers, and quarter freeze cups from Mrs. Johnson, the neighborhood candy lady. Monte had plenty of friends from previous years at Three Pyramids, but he had began to notice a lot of new faces in the bustling lunchroom where grade levels had been split into lines. Mrs. Sheffield, the school secretary, soon approached Monte's grade level and divided them into the 4 lines that would be their 4th grade classes. Somehow, one of the lines began after Monte, and he knew something was up by the way Mrs. Sheffield eyed each of his peers, slowly lifting her penciled eyebrows as she passed each one of them. "Here we go," Monte muttered with regret in his voice. The hour that Monte had dreaded all summer had come upon him at last. There was nothing he could do but stand there and wrinkle his nose, trying to look tough. Inside, he felt a sort of despair springing up. The separation had begun, and thanks to Mrs. Sheffield's judgment and his mother's high hopes, the twins were no longer in the same class as Monte. He had made it into the honors program, while they remained in the regular classes. His mother had made him take the admissions test 3 times the previous spring and had nearly crashed the family car as she read the email notifying her of her son's acceptance into the program. Now Monte wished he had tried to flunk the admissions test. "Just great," he said to himself as he cut his eyes and sucked his teeth. He searched his new group for kids he knew, kids he grew up with on the South Side neighborhood. The pickings were slim. Instead, he found himself squinting at a few vaguely familiar faces, trying to remember the names of kids he had rarely spoken to. They must have come from the North Side. Their clothes were much nicer, their collared shirts were buttoned up to the very top, and all of the boys wore dress shoes, some without socks. The girls had pretty pigtails draped in beautiful red and blue ribbons, and navy blue dresses that flowed like fresh laundry on a clothesline past their knees. Nearly everyone in line joked with one another as though they had been friends their entire lives. The feeling of being an outcast soon began to overtake Monte. "Hey, Monte," a voice from behind said softly. "Sup?" "Whew, I thought I was going to be late on this first day." Turning slowly, Monte replied dryly, "You're excited about this, huh, Nathalie?" "Why not? We worked hard for this." "You sound like my mom." Typically, a subtle red blush came over Monte when he was near Nathalie. She had curly hair and skin the color of peanut butter. She had been in a reading group with him once when they were a bit behind in 1st grade, and she had always been around, usually ensconced in a group of laughing girlfriends. Now she was new to the honors program, and she, like Monte, was surrounded by unfamiliar faces. She found strength in being with Monte as he turned around and continued to pout. Just then, a fierce yet welcoming voice swept over the students and parents who crowded into the elementary cafeteria. "Good morning, beautiful children." "Good morning, Dr. Stiles," they responded in unison. The school principal stood erect on stage and seemed as though she was attempting to make eye contact with each and every student who stood before her. Her heels were very tall and very skinny, and her suit pants seemed to sway over her ankles, just above the gold anklet wrapped tightly around her right heel. She was much taller than any of the other teachers in the room and wore huge mood earrings that changed colors to reflect how she felt that day. At least that's what kids whispered during recess. She held the microphone to her mouth and waited for silence in the room to begin her formal welcome. Mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, big brothers, big sisters, welcome to the first day of school at Three Pyramids Elementary. I am Dr. Stiles, and we're in this together. We're here to build our children up and prepare them for the opportunities they can unlock with an incredible education. Dr. Stiles always spoke personally to the parents at Three Pyramids Elementary, not only to inspire them, but also to teach them how to inspire their children, which is probably why they soaked up every word Dr. Stiles enticed them with. At the conclusion of her welcome, the teachers all took their places at the head of their lines, including the four fourth grade teachers who towered over their students. Monte recognized two of the teachers from previous years, but avoided making eye contact. Mrs. Garcia was a kind, soft-spoken teacher who had always raved about teaching Mark when he was little. And Mrs. Bleacher had once taken Monte to the principal's office herself for an incident that involved racing rolly backpacks in the hallway. Both teachers were okay, but Monte hadn't really bonded with either of them. The other two teachers who stood in front of the lines, Monte had never seen before, and the teacher who stood directly in front of Monte caught him completely off guard. In front of Monte stood a black man in a suit. He was a black man Monte had never seen before. He was a type of black man Monte had never seen before. He didn't seem to fit in a school setting. He wore the kind of clothes Monte's father wore, and he even stood tall, with his back as straight as plywood, like Monte's father. This man captured the eyes of every student and parent nearby. But instead of shrinking from the attention, as Monte would have, he seemed to be making an effort to smile and make eye contact with each and every scholar. Monte couldn't help himself. When those dark eyes met his, he whispered, "Are you my PE teacher?" The man smiled, leaned down a bit, and whispered back to Monte, "No, I'm Mr. Wood, and I'll be your fourth grade inspirer for the year ahead." Inspirer? Monte thought, trying the word out. It sounded like something his mother would say, half embarrassing, half wonderful. For one of the rare moments in his life, he didn't know what to say. He stood in awe and was as confused as he was optimistic, for he had never met a teacher who looked like Mr. Wood. All his life, Monte was used to women of all colors being his teachers for his core subjects. Black men appeared only as PE teachers or his older brother's football coaches. Chapter 5. Classroom 32. Monte and his classmates filed into Classroom 32, toting with them their plastic bat guy and arachnid man backpacks and Ninja Turtles and Princess Peach lunchboxes. Immediately, Monte could tell Classroom 32 was unlike any other classroom he had been in. The desks weren't arranged in their usual solitary rows and columns. Instead, they were positioned to hold the students in groups of 4 or 5. There was no assigned seating yet, and Mr. Wood directed students to find a seat that made them feel comfortable. Monte shuffled towards the back of the class, then paused, arrested by a colorful sight. Mr. Wood had a wall coated with hundreds of college pennants. Monte recognized many of the schools that he, his father, and Mark watched on TV during their ritual college football Saturdays. But there were also several flags for schools Monte had never heard of. They weren't schools that he and his brother would watch play for the national championship. They weren't even in the same conference as Monte's favorite football and basketball team. Monte studied the mystery flags, wondering what kind of schools they might represent, until his eyes fell on one he recognized, the Fats University flag. Then, with a surge of surprise, he realized that all of the unknown flags must belong to HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. He had never seen these flags displayed in such a proud group. But the sight began to make sense as he made the connection between his teacher's pride and the pride his parents had for Fats University. All of the colors and symbols gave Monte a warm feeling, and he wished more walls in classrooms throughout 3 pyramids could be covered this way. Mr. Wood called again for his scholars to take their seats, and Monte jumped a little, then hurried across the room and placed his belongings on top of a desk next to one of the few boys he recognized from his neighborhood. The boy looked like him, but wasn't due to his Asian descent. There were a few other kids from the South Side neighborhood that Monte recognized from endless evenings out and about in the community with his friends. Unfortunately, none of the other boys shared the same African-American identity as Monte. Honestly, there wasn't very much of a mix of colors and races within the honors program. While it wasn't as dotted with color as the South Side neighborhood, there were a few outliers that represented the diversity present in Monte's classroom. These were kids who never came outside to play with Monte and his friends, and Monte never understood why. "Hey," Monte said to his chosen neighbor, "I've seen you before taking out the trash and helping your mom get your baby sister out of the car. You stay on Axel Street, near Darren and David's house, right?" "Who are Darren and David?" the boy retorted. He wore goggle glasses attached to a lime green elastic band around his neck. "The twins who stay across the street from you. They're cool. Well, Darren's a little bossy to David since he was born 7 minutes before him. He's always trying to big bro him. Don't tell him I said that," Monte said as though the boy babbled as much as he was beginning to. "You know, it's the house with the black and red basketball hoop in the driveway. I'm Monte, by the way." As Monte reached out his hand, he remembered a Saturday morning when he and his friends had tried to wave the young Vietnamese boy over to shoot hoops with them. The boy had rejected them by shaking his head and going inside. Maybe he had just been busy, Monte thought, but he decided not to bring the memory up. "I'm Bao," responded the young boy. Then as the class began to settle down, Bao leaned in and whispered, "Yeah, I've seen you guys before. I just never thought I was good enough to come over with you guys to play. I'm not really the athletic type." "Not the athletic type?" Monte gawked. "You're the tallest kid in this room. You could do layups over our heads." Bao's eyes twinkled, but he still denied Monte's claim. "Nah, I'm a klutz. I believe it when I see it." "You'll never see it," Bao teased. Then he smiled and clicked his mechanical pencil 3 times. Mr. Wood made himself comfortable on the stool behind his cherry-stained podium, which wore a sign reading, "Be encouraged, but never intimidated." He waited for his students to finish greeting one another, then stood behind his podium and waited on his class's full attention. In his warmest tone, Mr. Wood said, "Good morning, class, and welcome to the 4th grade. I promise to prepare you not just for 5th grade, but for life's toughest choices ahead." Monte and his classmates didn't breathe a word. All were perplexed by the sight of a young teacher of color. Monte eagerly awaited for his teacher to pull out a basketball or talk about last night's game, but that never happened. Mr. Wood simply went on to share his classroom expectations and gush about how much he was looking forward to getting to know his new batch of 10 and 11-year-olds. "In this class, we learn from one another. I never want to hear anyone talk down to their classmate. Only encouragement is allowed here. Just as you will one day take chances and risks in your own lives, you must take chances and risks in this classroom by being the scholars I know you all are," said Mr. Wood. Monte and his classmates sat as still as the abandoned home on Pike Street that nearly burned down last Christmas morning. Looking around at one another, they realized that this year was going to be a bit different than previous years. Many of them were afraid, and it showed. For many of them had never seen a college-educated African-American man in a suit outside of their neighborhood church or a press conference after a basketball game. But Monte wasn't afraid. He felt more at ease than he had all day. Maybe even more at ease than he had all summer. He hadn't known Mr. Wood for 20 minutes, but he felt a connection to the man as if they had taken the same route to school that morning or had woken to the same tune Monte's mother sang in his ear. King Monte, be great if you may.